Here are 7 of history's most famous motorcycle accidents. Little did they know that their two-wheeled rides would have such fatal consequences. Number 7. Stephen Stayner. Stephen Stayner was a well-known American kidnap victim who initially made national headlines in the early 1980s. In 1972, at the age of 7, Stephen was abducted by child molester Kenneth Parnell and was forced to stay with him for over 7 years. He eventually managed to escape in 1980 with Timmy White, a 5-year-old boy who Parnell had kidnapped recently, and together they went to the police. Parnell was arrested and both children were reunited with their families. Stephen had trouble readjusting with his real family and was often teased by other kids at school for being molested. He eventually dropped out, drank heavily, and got kicked out of his home. He later got married, had kids, and worked with child abduction groups. But the tragic part of Stephen's story was not over. On the afternoon of September the 17th, 1989, Stephen was on his way home from work on his motorcycle. It was raining and the slippery road caused him to collide with a car. He died shortly afterwards at the hospital, having sustained severe head injuries. At Stephen's funeral, one of his pallbearers was 14-year-old Timmy White, the boy who he helped escape 9 years earlier. Number 6. Don Rich. Donald Eugene Ulrich, otherwise known by his stage name Don Rich, was a famous American country musician. He was noted as a skilled guitarist and fiddler from an early age, and at 16 he opened for Elvis Presley at the Tacoma Lincoln Bowl in 1957. After a year of college, Rich dropped out and joined Buck Owens in his tours and records, eventually forming the Buckaroos, the band responsible for creating the signature Bakersfield sound of the early 60s country music scene. Owens and Rich experimented a lot with their music and scored #1 hits repeatedly between 1966 and 1972. But their enormous success of this turnaround was cut short because of a tragedy on July the 17th, 1974. After finishing work that day at the recording studio in Bakersfield, Rich mounted his motorcycle and headed to the central coast of California, where he was to join his relatives for a family vacation. For unclear reasons, his motorcycle hit a center divider at the highway, causing him to crash. Rich was pronounced dead on arrival at the hospital. Mysteriously, investigations revealed that there were no skid marks, no mechanical problems, or other apparent factors that would have contributed to the crash. The cause of the accident still remains unknown to this day. Buck Owens was devastated by the death of his bandmate and for years refused to openly discuss about it. He had reportedly been pleading for Rich to quit riding for years and had asked him not to take his motorcycle on the day of the crash. Number 5. Luke Borden. Joseph Luke Borden was a Canadian professional ice hockey player who played for the NHL's Vancouver Canucks and their AHL affiliate, the Manitoba Moose. During his childhood, he was diagnosed with a juvenile arthritis and became wheelchair-bound. However, he managed to overcome his medical condition and played in local minor ice hockey teams before eventually turning professional at the age of 16. Internationally, Borden represented Canada and contributed to his national team, winning 2 World Junior Championships in a row in 2006 and 2007. Sadly, the young player's promising career and life was cut short because of a tragedy that happened near his hometown of Shippagan in 2008. Borden had just picked up a new hobby, motorcycling, and had just acquired his motorcycle license. On May the 29th, 2008, he went for a ride on his recently purchased Suzuki GSX R1000. For some reason, he lost control and crossed the road center line, hitting a transport truck. Canada's Environmental Department noted that strong gusts of winds over 31 miles per hour were blowing in the area at the time, which might have contributed to the crash and death of Luke Borden. He was 21 years old. Borden's death was seen as a great loss for his teammates. Manitoba Moose players wore LB patches all season, while Team Canada did the same during the 2009 World Junior Ice Hockey Championships, which they managed to win. Number 4. Diego Chico Corrales. Diego Chico Corrales was an American boxer who competed professionally from 1996 to 2007. He was a multiple-time world champion, winning titles in both the super featherweight and lightweight divisions. Corrales is best known for his legendary fight against Jose Luis Castillo on May 7, 2005, for which he and his rival received Fight of the Year honors by the Ring and the Boxing Writers Association of America. It was a unification bout between two lightweight champions. Corrales held the WBO title, while Castillo held the WBC title. The two contenders traded brutal punches all the way to the 10th round, where Corrales was knocked down twice. However, Corrales somehow managed to get back on his feet and produce one of the greatest comebacks ever seen in the sport, landing numerous punches on his opponents, causing the referee to declare him the winner. On May 7, 2007, exactly 2 years after his fight with Castillo, Corrales met his end in a 3-vehicle accident. He was riding a 2007 Suzuki GSX-R 1000 motorcycle near his home in Las Vegas and crashed into the back of a vehicle that he was trying to pass. He was sent flying into the air and was then struck by an incoming vehicle. Corrales was rushed to the hospital in an ambulance but was pronounced dead on arrival on the same day of the legendary bout that he won 2 years earlier. Number 3. Barry Manicky. The British royal family has always made headlines, sometimes for bad reasons. The past few generations of the House of Windsor have had their fair share of scandals, from affairs to divorces, and even a king renouncing his throne. Towards the end of the 20th century, the troubled relationship between Prince Charles and Princess Diana remained the object of worldwide media scrutiny even after their divorce, culminating in the fatal car crash in Paris in 1997, which ended Diana's life. A decade before that, a traffic collision involving Barry Manicky, Diana's bodyguard, had taken place in London in 1987. While the two separate events are publicly referred to as accidents, many believe they are actually part of one large conspiracy perpetrated by British intelligence. Barry Manicky was a police officer with the Royal Protection Squad who was assigned as bodyguard to Diana in 1985. The two eventually developed a close friendship, and there were rumors of them having an affair. Barry was soon moved from his royal protection duties to diplomatic protection. According to Diana, he was chucked out. In 1987, Barry was riding as a pillion passenger behind a fellow policeman on a Suzuki motorcycle in London. A 17-year-old teenager driving a Ford Fiesta nearby was dazzled by bright lights coming from an unknown car, which caused him to accidentally crash into the motorcycle, carrying Barry, killing the police officer. The incident was ruled as accidental death, while the car with bright lights, which contributed to the crash, could not be traced. Diana maintained that the tragedy was not an accident and that Barry was murdered because he knew too much, even admitting that they were both in love with each other. Number 2. Dwayne Allman and Barry Oakley. Dwayne Allman, aka Skydog, was an American guitarist and leader to the Allman Brothers Band, which he co-founded with his brother Greg in 1969. The band had great success in the early 70s, with their At Fillmore East album being widely considered as one of the greatest live albums in rock music. Dwayne himself is particularly recognized as a great guitarist, famous for his inventive improvisational skills and expressive slide playing. In 2003, Rolling Rolling Stone magazine ranked him number 2 in their list of 100 greatest guitarists of all time, placing him behind Jimi Hendrix. But just months after the Allman Brothers' initial success with the release of At Fillmore East, tragedy struck. On October the 29th, 1971, while the band was on a break from recording and touring, Duane was riding his Harley-Davidson Sportster motorcycle at high speed on a road in Macon, Georgia, when a flatbed truck carrying a huge crane stopped suddenly at an intersection. Duane swerved sharply out of the way, but still struck the vehicle and was knocked off his Harley, was shot up in the air and landed on his chest. With its owner pinned beneath it, the 550-pound motorcycle skidded another 90 feet before stopping along the curb. Duane suffered massive internal injuries but was still alive. He died several hours later in surgery at the hospital. After Duane's funeral and some weeks of mourning, the 5 surviving members of the Allman Brothers Band carried on their work. In an eerie twist of fate, Barry Oakley, the band's bassist, shared a similar fate with Duane almost a year later. On November the 11th, 1972, only a few blocks from where his fellow band member crashed, Barry took a sharp turn on his Triumph motorcycle and hit the back of a city bus. He was thrown off his bike like Duane and hit his head. He remained conscious and caught a ride home, declining medical treatment. But Barry had in fact fractured his skull and was rushed to the hospital 3 hours later in pain and delirium. He died of cerebral swelling, with the doctors noted that he would have been saved had he immediately went to the hospital following his accident. Number 1. T.E. Lawrence. T.E. Lawrence is known worldwide by his nickname, Lawrence of Arabia, a British archaeologist, diplomat, and military officer. He became famous for his exploits in the Middle East during World War I. He managed to persuade local Arabian tribes to cooperate with the British Army against the Ottoman Empire and even fought alongside the desert Bedouins during the Arab Revolt. The breadth and great variety of his activities earned him international fame, and his wartime exploits were depicted in the 1962 film Lawrence of Arabia, which is considered by many as one of the greatest and most influential films of all time. After having avoided death in numerous battles throughout the war, Lawrence ended up meeting his end in a tragic road accident at home. In 1935, just 2 months after leaving military service, Lawrence was riding his Bruff Superior SS-100 motorcycle near his cottage in southwest England. A dip in the road caused him not to see 2 boys on their bicycles, and he swerved just in time to avoid them, but lost control of his vehicle and got thrown over the handlebars. He was not wearing a helmet and suffered serious traumatic head injuries that left him in a coma. He died 6 days later at the hospital at the age of 46. The site of his crash is marked by a small memorial at the side of the road. One of the doctors treating Lawrence was the neurosurgeon Hugh Cairns, who consequently conducted a study centered around the unnecessary deaths of motorcyclists through head injuries. His research eventually led to the use of crash helmets by motorcycle riders, saving the lives of many. Lawrence's privately owned SS-100 motorcycle has been loaned and displayed in the UK's Imperial War Museum and National Motor Museum. After the whale shark, the basking shark, also known as Ceterinus maximus, is the world's second largest species of fish. The largest known specimen was measured at approximately 40 feet and weighed almost 20 tons. One of the basking shark's most distinguishable features is its massive cavernous jaws, which are more than 3 feet wide.